Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I'm Ryan and today's topic is Robin Rocky Myers, or Mayers, Myers, facing execution. And this is probably going to be maybe 3 to 4 part video, and this is the first part. And this video is research based. For the research in this video, I used an article to gather information for this topic. The link to the article will be in the video description box. If you're interested to know more after you watch, I've linked my social media accounts in the video description box as well. If you like and enjoy my content, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, like, share, or leave a comment or any suggestion you have below. You can support or help out my channel by becoming a Patreon. Thanks a lot. Disclaimer: I don't mean any disrespect to anyone I talk about in this video. This video is being done to seek justice for the family, Rocky Myers family, and the victim's family too, because based on what I read, it doesn't seem like he actually did this crime. Trigger warning: this case involves drug use, murder, police corruption, and racism. This case also has some graphic details of a murder. I looked everywhere to see if Rocky Meyer has been executed or is still waiting execution. I couldn't find any articles about him being executed, and I'm hoping that he hasn't been executed, and I'm fighting for him and his family to seek justice and a fair trial that he was never given. Now let's get into today's topic. The article that I read was titled, "Alabama is going to execute Rocky Meyer. He might be innocent," from the Nation website. The case of an intellectually disabled prisoner on death row is a window into many flaws in the death penalty. In the death penalty in America. On the night of October 4th, 1991, Mamie Dutton was asleep in a bedroom at her cousin's house in Decatur, Alabama. Her cousin, Lottie Mae Tucker, lived a few blocks west of the city's shopping district, in a rundown neighborhood that was struggling with crime and had been dubbed Cracktown by locals. Around midnight, the doorbell rang. When Dutton peered out of her room, she could see Lottie Mae talking through the window blinds with a man on the porch. He was aggravated and said that he had been in a car accident and needed to use a telephone to call his family. "I'm bleeding to death," he pleaded. Lottie Mae offered to dial the number for him. Dutton could hear that he had come inside. He was just a jabbering and his voice was a quivering, Dutton said later in a statement. She heard Lottie Mae say that her husband was in the other room, a strange comment given she wasn't married. Suddenly, Lottie Mae cried out. Dutton was too scared to leave the room. "I just froze. I couldn't move," Dutton later told the police. "I knowed he was doing something to her." The man then ran into Dutton's darkened room and stabbed her in the side before running out of the house. She didn't manage to get a clear look at him, except to see that he was wearing a light-colored shirt. When Dutton came out of her room, holding the wound on her side, Lottie Mae was lying on the couch bleeding, with the phone in her hand. She had been stabbed 4 times, including once in the left side of her chest, but she had managed to dial 911 and was on the phone with Decatur police. An officer who had been patrolling the neighborhood arrived on scene minutes after Lottie Mae's call. Lottie Mae was nearly hysterical, but conscious enough to describe her attacker to the officers, who arrived moments later as a black man, stocky and short, with a light-colored shirt that looked like it had blood on it. An ambulance rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. The stab wound to her chest pierced her heart, and not long after arrival, she was pronounced dead. And the reason I keep saying light-colored shirt, because this is an important fact in this case. More than 2 years later, A man named Robin Rocky Meyer was convicted of Lottie Mae's murder. At the time of Lottie Mae's death, Rocky, excuse me, let me go back. At the time of Lottie Mae's death, Rocky was living across the street from her with his wife and children on one side of the converted duplex. Today, he is one of 175 prisoners on death row in Alabama, the same prison where Dominic Ray was recently executed. According to his lawyers, the state may have been prepared to kill an innocent man, convicting on the basis of scant evidence by a mainly white jury in the trial that lasted only a week. Rocky has an intellectual disability, scoring at or below the critical 75-point threshold for a formal diagnosis in 4 out of 5 IQ tests. His death sentence was imposed by a judge who overrode the jury's recommendation for life without parole through procedural opinion that is no longer legal. And because of this egregious conduct by an attorney working his case, Rocky lost his chance for post-conviction appeal, which meant he was unable to present new evidence in a federal case, including testimony revealing that the police interfered with a key witness. To Casey Keaton, a federal defender who picked up Rocky's appeal in 2007, the case was a checklist for everything that's wrong with the death penalty in America. I think there was an elderly white woman who was dead in Decatur, Alabama, and the prosecution was telling the jury, "Hey, we have this black man who did it," she said, and I think that's it. Rocky wasn't the first suspect to come under the spotlight during the investigation. After Lottie Mae's murder, detectives searched her house for forensic evidence. They lifted a number of fingerprints, including one partial palm print, and determined that a VCR, a valuable consumer good, in 1991 was missing. Then the day after the murder, a local man handed over to the Decatur Police Department a VCR matching the description of the one stolen from Lottie Mae's house. He said he'd found it at his sister's house, which was just a few blocks up the road from Lottie Mae's. The house wasn't an average family house. His sister was running the property as a shot house, where people could buy whiskey and beer, and a local drug dealer named Leon Butch Madden sold crack cocaine from the porch. Butch's operation was no secret to law enforcement, with one witness in the case later saying that he had a well-known relationship with the Decatur police. There were rumors he had been given a de facto license to sell drugs in exchange for information and other favors. When police called him Butch, he complied, along with one of his lieutenants, Willie Roadrunner Raybon, I think. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. After questioning, the two men signed statements saying that a regular customer of the shot house, Anthony Coolbreeze Baltine, I'm sorry if I said that wrong too, had traded the VCR for crack on the night of Lottie Mae's murder. Butch's statement described Coolbreeze as showing up with the VCR, sweating and shaking, acting paranoid as hell. I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to say that word, but that's what it was in there. Coolbreeze was known in the neighborhood. Although he was a heavy crack user, his family was respected, with deep roots in Decatur. Soon police got another tip that pointed towards his involvement in the murder. A woman who lived in the neighborhood called in and said she had seen She had seen him running into an alley near Lottie Mae's house on the night of the murder, wearing a white shirt stained with blood. Armed with the statements, detectives put out a warrant for Coolbrie's arrest, picking him up at the aluminum plant where he worked. With Coolbrie's in custody, the governor's office issued a reward for further information about the murder to see if they could strengthen their case. A few weeks later, a local man who'd known Coolbrie's for nearly 30 years came forward to claim it, saying that he had seen someone else across the street near Lottie Mae's house with a VCR tucked under his arm on the night of the murder. He had been tracked down by an investigator working on Coolbrie's defense team, who had found him working at the same country club where Coolbrie's father served as a head waiter. He offered detectives an affidavit saying that the man had been seen crossing the road with short, stocky, certainly not Coolbrie's, and was nearly 6 foot tall. 6 foot tall. Detectives called Butch and Roadrunner back into the station for another interview where both men recanted their earlier statements. Roadrunner claimed that he implicated Coolbrie's because he was angry over an argument they had the night of the murder. Butch said that he had backed up Roadrunner's statement because I figured that that's what everyone wanted to hear. They said that the story they originally told was still mostly true. A man had come to the shot house asking for crack on credit the night of Lottie Mae's murder, returning later with the VCR to trade. But there was a major change. Instead of Coolbrie's, they fingered Rocky Myers as the man who had come to the shot house with the VCR. Rocky Myers grew up in New Jersey, one of 10 children in what relatives describe as a hard life. His father was an alcoholic and his mother battled depression after having her first child at 14. From early on, it was apparent that Rocky had a hard time keeping up with other children his age. At the age of 11, he was diagnosed with an intellectual disability termed mental retardation at the time. Rocky was a misunderstood gentle person, remembered a neighbor. He did not excel like his brothers did. He struggled at school, never learning how to read above a 3rd grade level. And at the age of 16, he couldn't tell time. Rocky eventually married and had 4 kids, moving to the west side of Decatur, a small port town just south of Tennessee border where his wife's family lived. His children remember him as a loving dad who, despite his struggles with drug abuse, never left their lives or abused them. He was there for us. We never had to beg for anything to eat. I mean, we didn't have everything in the world, but we had him and my mom's. I mean, we had us, said Dion Meyer, his second youngest son. I just don't have any memory of him being any type of violent person. Rocky and his family eventually settled into a house across the street from Lottie Mae. He did odd jobs, scrapping together money from friends and family while his wife worked as a cook at a nearby restaurant. At the time of Lottie Mae's murder, Rocky was a regular user of crack, and while he had been arrested for theft, he had never been charged with a crime involving violence. When he had the money, he'd walk to a nearby alley that ran 3 blocks up from his house to Butch's shot house and buy $10 to $20 worth of crack. After Butch and Roadrunner changed their statement, Homicide detectives turned their focus on Rocky, who was on probation for receiving stolen property. Detectives called him in for a urine test, which he failed, a violation of his probation. Rocky was sent to jail, where he was interrogated. The interrogation was not filmed or recorded, but the two detectives gave an account of it during Rocky's trial. According to Detective Sergeant Dwight Hale, Rocky admitted to using crack, but denied knowing anything about the murder, and said he'd never met Roadrunner or Butch before. But when Hale asked Rocky if he knew a man named Marzell Ewing, and I'm sorry if I say his name wrong, Rocky said he did. Marzell was an associate of Butch's who, in his own words, sold drugs, watched houses, and did basically anything he needed at the time. He and Rocky knew each other well from around the neighborhood. So when Hale said that Marzell had made a statement saying that he'd seen Rocky give a VCR to Butch the night Lottie Mae was killed, Rocky hung his head. In the following hours, he admitted knowing Butch and Roadrunner and said that he had indeed traded a VCR for crack at the Shot House on the night of Lottie Mae's murder, but he denied that he had been at Lottie Mae's house that night. He claimed that he found the VCR stashed in the alley that runs between his house and the Shot House. When detectives pressed him on the timing of his story about finding the VCR and taking it to Butch, he faltered first. It was 40 minutes before the police arrived at Lottie Mae's house, then 10 minutes, and finally he said he couldn't remember clearly. When Hale told him he was facing the electric chair, he cried and asked to speak to his mother. Keaton, Rocky's current attorney, says that his inability to provide a clear timeline during the interrogation has everything to do with his intellectual disability, which she observed in more than a decade of working with him on his case. For years, when she had visited him in prison, for example, she found it strange that he would refuse her offer to eat while they talked about his case, until she realized he didn't know how to operate a vending machine. He was under extreme stress and anxiety and not understanding a lot of the communication, she said. Asking him a month plus out, what were you doing on October 4th? There was no way he can provide a good memory. So you have someone who's intellectually disabled, bumbling, and sounding like someone's bumbling. But for detectives, Rocky's admission that he initially lied among his erratic account of the timeline and the statements they had from Butch, Roadrunner, and Mizell, saying that they saw Rocky with the VCR, was all they needed. Cool Breeze was released, and Rocky was charged with the capital murder of Lottie Mae Tucker. Rocky's trial began 2 years later. The prosecutor told the jury a straightforward story. Rocky's drug addiction had overwhelmed his judgment, and after Butch refused to give him crack on credit, he broke into Lottie Mae's house and killed her for her VCR. But there are parts of the prosecution story that didn't add up. To start, multiple witness describes Rocky's attire the night they saw him at the Shot House as black or dark brown rather than a light-colored shirt that Lottie Mae and her cousins said their assailant was wearing. And Roadrunner testified that Cool Breeze had also been at the Shot House on multiple occasions. At one point, sweating real hard and wearing a white sweatshirt with blood on it. Rocky had terrible eczema. Even the detectives who interrogated him noticed his flaky, scaly skin. Yet, despite the prosecution's contentions that he had been in a violent struggle with Lottie Mae, no skin flakes were found at the scene. None of the prints that the investigators found on the crime scene matched. Roadrunner also testified that the alley leading to the shot house was a well-known stash spot, saying that he himself had frequently found and hidden stolen goods and drugs there. Police arrived at Lottie Mae's house just minutes after her frantic 911 call, making it plausible that the assailant had stashed the VCR in the nearby alley once he heard sirens approaching the area. In fact, there was no evidence at all that Rocky had been at the scene of the crime, aside from his possession of a VCR. They had all these people, witnesses, come up, and they would have had a given name and a nickname, and then a street nickname, said Mae Puckett, a juror who served on the case. But with each nickname came a different version of the story. This is going to be the end of part 1. If you would like to watch the next part, I'm going to film it. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you share this video with anyone, because I really would like to get his case possibly a second chance. Hopefully this video will get his case to have a second chance, or get him to get an appeal. Thanks for watching. I love you guys. See you in the next part. Bye.